Okay, now we're going to talk about changing the inner tube on a tire or on a wheel. First off, if your tire isn't already deflated all the way, we're going to simply release the air by pushing on the valve core. What I'm going to do is just remove the valve core. It lets it out a lot quicker and completely. And just set that aside. All right, so we're completely deflated now. So what I'm going to do is take my tire levers. You generally are going to need 2 of them. And we're going to go offset from the valve stem, not right on it, and then just hook in far enough to grab the bead of the tire, but being careful not to hook that inner tube. It's just good practice not to hook it, because if you hook it, it can pinch the inner tube between the tire and the tire lever and cause a hole in your inner tube. It's just good practice. I know you're probably going to replace the inner tube, but just good practice to not pinch it. All right, so we've got the beads all the way removed. This is a pretty loose fitting tire on the rim, so it came off fairly easy. Sometimes you'll need to hook one and then hook another one to get it started and to get it to come off. So now we've got our valve stem right here. I'm going to simply push on the valve stem and then reach in, grab the inner tube like this, and I'm going to start pulling it out. And we're going to pull it out all the way. And now, if you know about where the hole was at in the inner tube, you want to inspect your tire on the inside. You always want to inspect the tire on the inside with your hand and just run your fingers all the way around the inside of the tire, feeling for something that may have stuck into the tire, broke off on the outside, but might still be protruding through on the inside. And therefore, if you put a new tube in there or patch the one you have, that protrusion is actually going to cause another hole and a lot more frustration. So we feel to be pretty clean there. If you couldn't find anything, you can also identify where the hole is in the inner tube by adding a little bit of air back to it. Put our valve core back in. Now we're just adding some form. Now, if you want to find out where your leak's at, add air to your inner tube and then run. Actually, it'd be better if you added a little bit more. Yeah, inner tubes get pretty big. And then you're just going to run your hands around slowly until you feel an air leak. The smallest little air leak you'll be able to fill with your hands. You don't have to submerge this in water and look for bubbles. You could actually fill it with your hands if you move slowly enough and put enough pressure in the inner tube. This inner tube can expand out pretty big, actually. So another way to just double check, if let's say you discover a hole approximately here and it's about this distance from the valve stem, you can lay that on the tire, find out where your valve hole's at right here, and if you know your hole's right here, then you probably want to put a little emphasis on inspection inside the tire to make sure there's not a debris protruding through that would puncture your new or replaced inner tube. So I'm going to deflate this again. Now, when putting a new inner tube in, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just set this aside and we will go ahead and put a new tube in right here. This is 26 by 2.125, TAC9 of course. Take your valve cap off, unroll it, flip it like this. Now what you want to do is add a little bit of air to your new tube. that is creating a little bit of form, and that'll prevent us from, whenever we're tucking it into the tire, that it's not getting twisted or bunched up. Don't add too much, but just enough to create a little bit of form. Find your valve hole, push your valve stem in, pull your tire over. Now just start tucking your tire in, pushing it straight in. Don't roll it in, because now you're twisting the inner tube like this. You want to push it straight in towards the tire. Don't roll it in. We'll go in all the way around like this, and then now we'll just grab the tire and roll the tube into it. Now, your valve stem, you can see this is moving around. Make sure you don't leave the put the tire in with your valve stem at an angle. It needs to be at a 90 degree to the rim, you know, totally perpendicular to it. So what we're going to do now is start putting the bead in. We'll just go all the way around. And we've got the tire on. Look on both sides, make sure it is on all the way on both sides. It is. Now, this is the part, is the initial inflation that will cause an inner tube to pop, and it's not a failure of the tube or a failure of the tire, it's an improper installation. And I'll try and explain what I'm talking about. So first off, I rotated the tire like this to get the valve stem straight up and down. Now I'm going to add air to the tire. This is where you got to pay attention. So I'm going up to 10 psi, creating some form to the tube, but also forming the tire, and the bead of the tire is actually initially hooking onto the rim. So the bead of your tire, so if you have your rim here and you have your tire here, it actually has to hook like this. And what happens if you're not paying attention, for an evenly beaded tire to rim hook, then one little section could come out on either side to where the tire is not fully hooked. You may think it is, but it's not. It's out on the edge out here. Now, when you start inflating with a lot of pressure in here, you start getting up to 15, 20, 25, 30, then that's putting a lot of pressure, and eventually that bead's going to slip out, and that inner tube's going to pop right out, or sneak right out between the rim and the tire, and it's going to explode. That is not a failure of the inner tube. Our tubes are seamless, so there's not a seam to rip. It's not a failure of the tire. If an explosion like that happens and you don't have any damage to your tire, the only thing that happened is the inner tube snuck out between the rim and the tire. Otherwise, your tire would be damaged because the tire contains the inner tube. So once that tire hooks into the bead of the rim and they're properly hooked, then there's no way that inner tube can get out unless your tire were to fail and blow a big hole in your tire. It's pure physics. The inner tube is contained within the tire. This inner tube, if it wasn't in the tire, it could get this big around. But it can't, because the tire is limiting the size it can get. But if there's any way for it to come out, it's going to find the weakest point and take advantage of that and sneak right out, and it's going to be a big pop. So anyway, most important. So you put 10 psi in it, excuse me, and inspect your bead all the way around. You'll see this line on the tire, and it should be pretty close to the same point in reference to the rim all the way around and on both sides. This line right here. It's fairly even all the way around, little ups and downs, but you can tell the entire tire is uniformly hooked to the rim. So now, take your pressure up to, let's go up to about 25 pounds. Let's do another inspection. Looking good. Looking good. This bead will not come unhooked. I can go ahead and fully inflate now. This is just a cruiser tire, so we only take it up to about 45, 40, 40 is a good number because it gives you a little bit softer of a ride. So anyhow, that's how you change the inner tube on a tire.